for how big a switch this is going to be to our network on the 1st of February. There will be a new timetable in place everywhere, on our trains, on our buses and on our trams as well, because this is integrating the Metro Tunnel, not just with the Cranbourne, Pakenham, Sunbury lines, but with the entire public transport network.
Okay, hello everyone. This is going to be a video about the big switch, and I have here in Tateset Studios with me Philip Mallis from the YouTube channel Philip Mallis. Welcome, Philip.
Hello, thanks for having me back.
No worries. So right now it's what is it, the 15th of January?
16th.
16th. It's the 16th of January, and we're currently still in the summer start, the temporary timetable transitioning into the Metro Tunnel's public operation. And we have finally got the timetables for the big switch that kicks in on the 1st of February. So we finally know what's actually happening on that date, and we can make a bit of analysis about it. And it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's some pretty good things, and there's some things that are definitely not what we expected, or not what we hoped for, let's say. So we're going to have a look at all of that. So essentially what the big switch is moving the Sunbury, Pakenham and Cranbourne lines into the Metro Tunnel full time. So at the moment there's just a temporary timetable of trains running through there off-peak. This will be Sunbury will start through running with Cranbourne and Pakenham, the Dandenong corridor, through the Metro Tunnel full time. And this sort of triggers a couple of other changes on the system as well. So Cranbourne, Pakenham will come out of the City Loop, the Caulfield tunnel of the City Loop, and the Frankston line will go back into the City Loop. At the same time, the Frankston line currently runs through with Werribee Williamstown. That connection will be severed, and Werribee Williamstown will through run with Sandringham, although we have discovered that's not happening immediately. It's apparently happening later this year. So for the moment, Sandringham and Werribee Williamstown will both terminate at Flinders Street. And then in theory, one of the big things was that taking Sunbury out of the City Loop in the Northern Tunnel gives us space to run a lot more Craigieburn and Upfield trains. And we'll have a look at what the reality of that is shortly. But first things first, the press release for this big event, the big headline is more than 1,000 services added. So something we probably need to clear up straight away is that whenever they talk about number of services, they're nearly always talking about weekly, so the number of services across the entire week. So 1,000 across a week is actually, once you divide that by 7, that's 143 services per day. They don't always say weekly, so in the actual headline it just says more than 1,000 services added, and then when they mention it again a couple of paragraphs down, it says 1,000 new weekly services. So they're sort of intermittent with whether or not they say weekly. I personally think if they're going to use such an arbitrary length of time, they should say weekly every time, because timetables aren't written by week, they're written by day. Like, you know, more or less every weekday in the timetable is the same timetable repeating. So it doesn't really make sense to do it on a weekly basis. And I think maybe the best example of this is one of the promises for, or one of the changes to the regional timetable is that there's going to be 10 new Seymour trains, or 10 new Seymour services, which is weekly. That's 2 per weekday. That is 1 return trip per weekday. So, you know, 1 return trip per weekday on the Seymour line doesn't sound as exciting as 10 new Seymour services, but that's the format that they are presenting it in.
The other thing with the 1,000 new services is that it only applies to the Sunbury, Cranbourne and Pakenham lines. So that number, it clarified, I guess, in this press release that it's only on those lines.
That's right. Yeah, it's not clear in some places that it does only apply to that corridor, and it also really only applies to half of that corridor as well. I was playing around with the numbers, actually trying to see how they got to the number 1,000, and basically there's a few different ways you could look at this, and none of them give you exactly 1,000. But to be fair, they do usually say more than 1,000, and that is correct on the Sunbury side. So the reason it's kind of complicated is there's a lot of situations here where a single through running service will now replace what were 2 services either side of the city. So if you're just counting numbers of services, technically that's -1. You've gone from 2 services to 1 service. So if you look at it that way, it's actually about -620 going by my numbers. But that is an unfair way of looking at it because most of the Dandenong ones are extended across to the Sunbury side. So if you look at it that way, the Dandenong corridor is going to have about 324 extra weekly services, and the Sunbury corridor is going to have 1,254 extra weekly services. So Sunbury is by far the biggest winner out of this. And if you boil that down to daily, that's on the Dandenong side, it's 34 extra trips on a weekday, 80 on Saturday, 74 on Sunday. For Sunbury, it's 198 extra trips per weekday, 136 Saturday, 128 Sunday. So it is a big change for Sunbury. And I should say, these numbers, there will be a small margin for error. I've sort of done this myself manually, just using publicly available information. So it's not going to be exact, but it's definitely close ballpark, unless I've made some huge mistakes, which I hopefully haven't.
Looks fine to me.
Yeah.
I haven't checked the numbers myself, but it looks fine. And that really is the message there, that Sunbury is the big winner.
Yeah.
And then we have to break down the line into other segments, don't we? Because the services are not the same across the entire lines.
And I suppose the other thing too about Dandenong is that the Dandenong corridor already has a pretty good timetable for most of the day, and a lot of the new services on the Dandenong side are like Sunday mornings, late at night. I think largely those actually. So it's a good filling out of the service on the Dandenong side, but it's sort of revolutionary on the Sunbury side.
So when we're talking about those extra services, we're actually talking about up to Dandenong and Water Gardens mainly, / West Footscray. So.
Yeah. So I guess the main thing to know about the timetable through the tunnel is that through the tunnel itself, it's a 10-minute frequency, a minimum of 10-minute frequency, first train to last train. So roughly 5 a.m. till midnight, you've got a train every 10 minutes through the tunnel. Which
will be the best out of any line.
That's right, absolutely, yeah. And then when you look at the three outer termini, Sunbury, Pakenham, Cranbourne, they are a 20-minute frequency, first train to last train. So that in itself is quite impressive. I think that's really good. There is a little exception with the night network, which we'll come to maybe in a minute. And also, quite impressively, those minimum frequencies actually apply on weekends as well. So even at 11 p.m. on a Sunday night, there'll still be 20-minute trains from all those termini and 10-minute trains through the tunnel. So that is pretty good.
So those 10 minutes really are only on that section of line between West Footscray and Dandenong. There was the new turnback built at West Footscray Station as part of the Metro Tunnel business case, which was adding a third platform, which allowed trains to terminate at West Footscray and then come back through the Metro Tunnel to go to Dandenong. Beyond West Footscray, the timetable is still, as we said, a massive upgrade from what was there before, but not as many benefits up to Water Gardens and further out to Sunbury.
That's right. So those that 10-minute frequency to West Footscray does extend out to Water Gardens, which crucially means Sunshine gets it. Basically between about 6 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. on weekdays, and between about 10 and 7 on weekends, most of those West Footscray trains go to Water Gardens. So you actually have Water Gardens to Dandenong as a pretty long corridor with a 10-minute frequency. Definitely one of the things that's maybe an issue here is that between West Footscray and Water Gardens, you have Sunshine, which is not only one of the busiest stations on the line, but it's also the future Sunshine Station super hub. It's, I guess, maybe a little disappointing that will have a 20-minute frequency at a lot of times when the more or less nowhere station of West Footscray will have a 10-minute frequency.
Yeah, so have things like Airport Rail in the future, all the V-Line connections, all the bus connections that go through there.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's a major activity centre and has been for a while. Yeah. So Sunshine's only going to get busier and much more populated, more jobs. West Footscray, there's the Bunnings, I think.
Yeah.
The transit-oriented Bunnings, it's there.
Yeah. Maybe should we talk about night network and what that means for the tunnel?
Well, so the night network, I mean, that's running, so we know trains, trams and some buses, some trams and buses through the night. This is no different for these lines. They will have trains running through as part of the current night network. But a curious thing that they did was to basically only have Town Hall Station operating out of the new stations that were built. So Parkville and Arden will not be open for night network, which is interesting given that they are the two stations, as well as Anzac, I guess, that provide new coverage to new public transport coverage, and they will not be operating for night network.
Yeah.
Which will be kind of interesting. I was saying before, places like Williston and Wattle Glen will have night network, but somewhere like Parkville...
If you can't get on a train at Arden, you can walk across to Macaulay, like one of the sort of worst stations on the network, but there'll be trains there at 3 a.m. on a Saturday. So.
Yeah, in Parkville, I guess you can catch the 59.
Yeah.
That's about it. So
and part of this is part of it's sort of consistent with how we do things at the moment, where the city loop doesn't run for night network, which in itself is stupid. But so it sort of makes sense that State Library, being an extension Melbourne Central, wouldn't be open. It's still silly, but it is consistent with the way we currently do it. However, it's not consistent that the 3 outer stations would be closed, because every other station on the network is open. So that's pretty baffling, and especially in the case of Parkville, it's a uni area, it's a hospital area, it's very much a 24-hour. It's probably the absolute target market for 24-hour transport. So it is really not great that will not be included. And the biggest problem with this is that is actually a first train on the Sunday morning gets pushed back. So back before the night network, the first trains anywhere on a Sunday morning were sort of 7 a.m. from the terminuses into the city. And one of the biggest things about bringing in the night network was that suddenly you could get to the city early on a Sunday morning. And all of the Metro Tunnel stations, except for Town Hall, are not going to be able to benefit from that. So the first trains through the tunnel, by the time they come out in from the suburbs, they won't be getting there until sort of 7:30 in the morning. In fact, I've got the timetable right here, so I'm going to look that up. So I'm very organised here, and I actually have all 55 pages of the Metro Tunnel timetable for February 1st printed out.
In the right order.
Yeah, in the right order, yeah. The first train stopping at all Metro Tunnel stations on a Sunday morning is not till 7:30.
And that's when it leaves Sunbury?
That's when it gets to Anzac. So I'll look at Town Hall to be consistent. So 7:34 for westbound trains, and where am I? Town Hall, and 7:33 for eastbound trains. So it's that is a very late start for a modern high frequency metro line. Having said that, many years ago I was in London and tried to get to Heathrow Airport at early on a Sunday morning, and discovered that they do basically the same thing there, and I had to get a taxi. So that was embarrassing.
We have, I think, one of the most extensive night network services of a city of our size anywhere in the world, I think. There are lots of comparable cities and much larger cities that don't have anything or have much more tokenistic services. So, but I mean, that problem you've just described is kind of a product of not starting the regular Sunday timetable until 7:30.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
It's kind of not really the night network's fault in that respect so much. It's the regular timetable starting so late.
The one advantage I can think of this is that if anyone wants to go for a fast express run through most of the tunnel, this will be your opportunity to do it.
Gunsel friendly.
Yeah, like express from Malvern to Town Hall to Footscray. It's a pretty good run.
If you're going to Footscray
in the middle of the night, but there you go.
If you want to go from Dandenong to Footscray, it's pretty good.
Yeah. So I guess in like we're saying, it's a minimum of 10-minute frequencies through the tunnel, but at peak times it does increase quite dramatically. There's a lot of extra trains from West Footscray and from Westall as well, and as well as more trains going all the way out to the ends. Most of the press around this has said a train on average every 3 to 4 minutes during the peak, which is a kind of interesting way of phrasing it, because for somewhere like Sydney Metro, I think what is it? 5 minutes. Yeah, but it's a fixed interval, right?
It's just 5
minutes. The reason why they're having to describe it as a 3 or 4 minutes on average here is that they are all basically different. The gaps change constantly. Which I guess has got a lot to do with our much more complex network and the fact that we've got a lot more terminating locations and different things going on. However, an average number should be a single number, so I decided to work out what the actual average was. And I worked this out from basically when the timetable starts ramping up at the start of the peak until 9 o'clock. And that gave me an average of 3.6 minutes apart westbound and 3.8 minutes apart eastbound. Kind of interesting that they're different, but if you include more of like the later peak, you might call the shoulder, I guess, then those numbers start to blow out over 4. But in that sort of core peak time, the number is between 3 and 4, which is what they're saying, just in a kind of strange way. So it's not incorrect. But having said that, so it jumps around between 3 and 4. There's a couple of gaps of up to 7 or 8 minutes in peak. And what I meant to check before I started recording this is, do those longer gaps line up with a Traralgon train on the Dandenong line? I'm going to guess that they are. I forgot to check, but I will check when I edit this, and I'll put the answer on screen now. So you will find out if that speculation was right or not. I think it probably is, looking at roughly... Oh, yeah, they're 40 minutes apart, those gaps. I think that will almost certainly line up with the Traralgon train.
Very suspicious.
And it's going to be very embarrassing if it doesn't now. I'm like doubling down on it. But anyway, so...
I agree with you. There you go. We'll both have it on our faces if we're wrong.
So I guess that's an interesting, characteristic of the fact that this line does share trackage with V line as well. So there's some inevitability of that. I don't think that's much of a problem. I don't think most people will notice that, but it is kind of a curiosity.
Well, once you get to those 3 to 4 minute, if it's 3 or 4 minutes, it doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
That's your real turn up and go frequency that you'd expect.
So I guess what we should talk about is it is a 10-minute frequency through most of the day through the tunnel. And what do we think about that? Do we think it should have been more frequent than that? Or I guess more importantly, does the 10-minute frequency actually count as turn up and go, which they've been trying to push?
Well, it's interesting. There's no agreement in on what does turn up and go actually mean? What even does rapid transit mean? Like, there's not everyone agrees on what that looks like. There's different definitions around. But 10 minutes from first to last train is a massive improvement on what we've got. So we've got to be relative a bit here as well in terms of what it was before and what the rest of the network is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This, as I said, this is the best service, overall of any line by quite a long way. So that's, 10 minutes I think is generally agreed. I think that's at the point where you can not use a timetable. Anything less than that, fantastic, because you're, average wait times 5 minutes. So that's great, but again, we're talking about part of this line. So we're talking about, the West Footscray Dandenong portion. Again, being relative with it, past West Footscray, it's still a huge, huge improvement, and in the Dandenong group, also get that huge improvement. I
think for me, 10 minutes is sort of right on that mark of, if I had an appointment somewhere, if I had to be somewhere at a specific time, I think I'd still be looking up which one to catch.
Yes.
So it is kind of problematic that like you say, everyone's definition of this is going to be different. One of the sort of things that I considered here was that a big benefit of the Metro Tunnel is supposed to be easing pressure on the tram corridor on St Kilda Road. And I don't think that a train every 10 minutes is enough to really grab traffic off the trams. I had a bit of a look, and if you're travelling between Anzac and State Library, it's 9 minutes faster to catch the train compared to catching the tram. If you're going from Anzac to Town Hall, it's 4 minutes faster to catch the train. So absolutely faster to catch the train, but you've got to add on probably as much as 3 to 4 minutes of time from getting from street level down to the platforms and back up at the other end. So that's already making it kind of marginal. You also will need to find out when that train is, and that could be as simple as pulling your phone out and looking at an app, but otherwise you're going to have to walk down to the concourse and check when the train is. Whereas in the time you might be doing that, if you can just see a tram coming, you're almost definitely going to be better off getting on the tram just out of convenience, even if it does take a minute or two longer. But there will be times, if the train is 8 or 9 minutes away, it will be faster to catch the tram. So,
and the tram is at surface level, which is closer to the destination. So you can see, if you're unfamiliar with the city, for example, or you're not really sure where you're going on the public transport network, if you can see out the window, oh, okay, there's Federation Square, I know to get off the tram now. If you're underground, you can't see anything.
Yeah,
so
really good
there's a lot of kind of, I would call, friction to people making this this switch
Yeah.
over from the train to the tram. Potentially in peak times, maybe more people might choose to do it because the frequency is higher.
Yeah.
The trams are more crowded, so there's, I guess, a push and a pull factor there in terms of getting people off the trams and the trains. Outside of peak times, it's a little bit harder to see that kind of critical mass of people moving from trams to trains.
For a lot of people, it'll be breaking an existing habit as well. And if they're going to try something new, they'll probably try it once. And if it doesn't work out well, they'll go back.
Yes, one bad experience is all it takes.
And I think this is possibly one of the downsides of the way they've done the summer start, is that people will have perhaps made that attempt at trying it now. I went to the Botanic Gardens the other day. I went back to Anzac, walked down to the concourse and saw that the next train was 22 minutes away. I know it's a 20-minute timetable, but it was 22 minutes away. And I stayed down there because it was novel. It was kind of my first time using the Metro Tunnel just for transport rather than for being a gunzel. So, I did wait the 22 minutes, but if I wanted to just get to the city quickly, I absolutely should have gone straight back up and caught the tram. So, hopefully people are sort of aware that that's not the full timetable yet, but who knows? People are not great with that sort of thing. So,
well, even then, I've ever heard people just, being around the Metro Tunnel, I've heard at least two over people saying, I don't know why they run it every 20 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. People don't understand. Yeah. Not everyone spends quite as much time as we do looking into these things.
Looking at timetables.
Something that I saw people comment on in a few different places was that there was some circumstance where some Sunbury Line stations actually had less trains in the new timetable. I'm not sure what people are referring to there, but I had a look at this and it's definitely not true across the whole day. The stations that get the least service on the line are Tottenham and Middle Footscray, which both have quite a few expresses, and they still have something like 40 more trains per day stopping there than they do currently. However, I did look at like a sample of the peak time. I forget what exactly I looked at. I think it was 6 to 9 or something like that, and it was 19 trains stopping at Tottenham in the new timetable compared to 20 now. So in that exact sample, it was different, but there are other trains either side of that, and the net benefit is still huge. So I don't think that's really something worth focusing on. Maybe it's an interesting thing, but I don't think it's a massive failing.
Since you mentioned that, it'd be interesting to see if that changes the V-line arrangements from Sunbury, because there was that whole fuss 10 years ago about passengers at Sunbury not being able to board V-line trains, and now they can. So I don't know if that's going to... I mean, it's a very small thing, but it just occurred to me. I wonder if that's going to change.
Almost certainly times for Bendigo trains will have to blow out a bit between Sunbury and the city, or Sunbury and Sunshine, I should say, where they share track with the Sunbury line. I think they already generally catch up to the suburban train in front of them, and if we're running a train every 3 minutes, they're definitely going to do that. So that could be another thing, though, to look at in those slightly longer gaps that appear in the peak that we're mentioning before.
But on the other side,
real question is does that same gap allow both a Traralgon train at one end and a Bendigo train at the other end? Well, that would be interesting. So so I guess the timetable on the tunnel corridor itself is pretty impressive. You could definitely make an argument that it maybe should have been like a 5-minute frequency during the day, but I think 10 minutes is acceptable, and I think the peak is very good. And I think the thing I'm most impressed about is how early and how late that 10-minute frequency goes. That's great. That is really, really good. And as you say, something that we do not have anywhere else at the moment. The Transport Victoria put out a little video sort of explaining the big switch, and one of the things they said was, if you're not on one of those lines, meaning Sunbury, Cranbourne, Pakenham, don't worry, because taking those lines out of the city loop will free up space for other lines and you'll all get more capacity. Which sort of leads us through to arguably the other part of the big switch, which was boosting service on other lines. And the first thing I want to say is that in terms of freeing up space in the city loop, that works in a very specific way. So the city loop is 4 tunnels, and they are completely independent of each other. The Metro Tunnel takes the Sunbury line out of the Northern Loop, and it takes the Dandenong trains out of the Caulfield Loop. So first of all, the other two tunnels, the Clifton Hill Tunnel and the Burnley Tunnel, do not get any capacity increase from this whatsoever. The Northern Loop gets the biggest capacity increase because Sunbury's just out of there completely. And then the Caulfield group, there's really no change unless you're an individual on a certain line. There's really no change because it's Dandenong coming out, Frankston going in. So there's not really a change to capacity there. It's just one line coming out being replaced by another line. So the only place where more space is actually being freed up in the loop is in the Northern Tunnel. And the other two lines that use that tunnel are Craigieburn and Upfield. So Craigieburn and Upfield, it's sort of been said for years that they couldn't get frequency increases until Sunbury was taken out of the loop. So this is one of the other big benefits of the Metro Tunnel, is allowing more capacity for Craigieburn and Upfield. And we were very, very much led to believe that this would be happening as part of the big switch. It was pretty specifically, at the very least, very strongly implied. It was hard to tell because we were never shown actual timetables, but I, for one, definitely thought we were going to see big timetable increases for Upfield and Craigieburn with the big switch. And the reality is not that. So, first of all, Upfield is limited by another factor, which is the fact that it's single track between Gowrie and Upfield. You can run a train every 14 minutes through that section. That's how long it takes to get a train up there, sit for 5 minutes while the driver changes ends, then come back. And there are some 14-minute gaps in the current timetable, but you can't run a train to Upfield any more frequently than that. So in the current timetable, there's a mixture of trains departing every 14 minutes, 15, 16, 17, 18, and it sort of bounces around. And I assume that was fitting around Sunbury trains in the loop. What they have done in the new timetable is even that out so they're all 16 minutes apart. That's good, I guess. It's more predictable. But I have seen a few people sort of frame this as an upgrade, saying like upgrades to the Upfield line with a train every 16 minutes, not mentioning what it was before. And the reality is that this is not any additional trains. Over the entire day, there are 57 trains out of Upfield in the current timetable, and there are 57 trains out of Upfield in the big switch timetable. So there's sort of a cleaning up of the Upfield timetable, but there is not actually any substantial improvement. There is not a single extra train on the Upfield line. Craigieburn has a slightly better deal, but not dramatically. It goes from 79 departures from Craigieburn on a weekday. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say departures from Craigieburn because there's a condition on that in a second. 79 services on the Craigieburn line on a weekday, and in the big switch timetable it'll be 81 on a weekday. So that's only two extra trains, and that's in one direction, by the way. The other slight change is that there's currently a handful of trains that terminate at Broadmeadows, and 3 of those are going to get extended to Craigieburn. So the net benefit between Broadmeadows and Craigieburn is 5 extra trains. So that's not bad. That's pretty good. And then south of Broadmeadows, it's 2 extra trains. So good. Yes, we always welcome extra trains, but this is not groundbreaking stuff. You know, this is stuff that could have happened in any small timetable change over the years and we wouldn't really have even noticed. I don't think it's the sort of thing I would put the phrase big switch in front of.
Certainly not when both of these were specifically included in the business case.
There were
certain things that were not.
Yeah.
This was.
I suppose the other thing I should say is that they are saying now that there will be more improvements for those 2 lines later in the year, as well as some to, I think, Werribee and Frankston, and definitely Sandringham. They haven't given us a date for it, and as per tradition so far, they've also not given us any actual details on it. But we were certainly led to believe that the big switch was when this would happen. And the fact that it's sort of, here's the big switch, and there'll be more to come because we're just getting started. And that's actually, we're just getting started is actually a quote from Gabrielle Williams in her post on Reddit recently, which also includes the line, "This is only the beginning." So for something that was really framed as a big, switching on the benefits of the Metro Tunnel, the reality is that the Metro Tunnel itself is being switched on, but many of the surrounding benefits around it simply aren't, and we're not really getting much information about when that's going to happen. And we don't know how big those benefits will be, whether they will be groundbreaking or not.
To say for the Upfield line specifically as well, one of the enabling bits of infrastructure there was the Gowrie turnback, which again was included as a core part of the business case. There were other things that weren't, which we can talk about a bit later, but this was a core part of it, was the Gowrie turnback and a bunch of other stuff, which hasn't, famously has not been delivered as part of this. So even if that was a constraint to providing those extra services, which it is, like, if you can turn back trains there, it makes it a lot easier. That was not included as part of the work for the Metro Tunnel. It was excluded a couple of years ago.
So even with, that's right, even with the best timetable possible, Upfield can't get more than a 14-minute frequency right now. You can terminate trains at Batman, and I will have to double check this, but I'm 95% sure you could run double the frequency with terminating a train at Batman in between each one, and I will also look that up and put that on the screen right now.
Probably.
I'm just creating work for myself in the editing stage. But it's not as desirable a place to terminate trains, but it could have been done for free, essentially, infrastructure-wise. So I guess the other thing is, like, it's entirely possible that there is some sort of constraint, a real constraint on why we haven't seen a big timetable increase on these other lines. And I have heard it may be a driver shortage, and I could believe that, but I think the disappointing thing is, if that is the case, then why not say that? Because what we've sort of had this big hyping around the service, and then with no real explanation at all that it's just not been presented, and now they're kind of flip-flopping around with later this year you'll get something. It's such an anticlimax, and I would be perfectly happy to hear, there's a driver shortage. Everyone go and train to be a train driver and it'll all be fine. It's much weirder having no explanation for this.
Even as recently as 2-3 weeks ago, where they changed the website of what changes are coming to your line, and then suddenly overnight people noticed, actually all this stuff's been removed or changed without explanation.
That's right. So there's this kind of, I guess, tool on the Big Build website which had select your line and then what will your benefits be on the 1st of February. And it didn't give you details. It just said, yes, there'll be a timetable change, or no, there won't be a timetable change. And the first thing that people spotted was, for the whole Burnley group, it said, no, there won't be a timetable change. Despite, that emphasis earlier on of being like all lines, all, blah, blah, blah. But one thing I'm absolutely certain of, because I, of course, looked up my own line, is that the Clifton Hill group did say there will be a timetable change. Now, to be clear, it didn't say there will be a timetable upgrade, so it could have just been a tweak, much like what's happened with Upfield, but it changed from saying there will be a timetable change to there will not be a timetable change. So really got to wonder what's going on there, because that's happened very recently. It was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Very, very soon.
And it was only 3 months ago that, the sort of the big press release was put out about the big switch, and there was the press conference that we were both at, where the wording was very much, more service on all lines, trams, trains, buses, regional trains, even regional coaches. And we've really got to look at that now and go, that's most of that has not followed through. So something's going on, and there probably might be an explanation, but I'd really like to hear it.
That's it. Maybe something changed 2 weeks ago. That's absolutely fine. The world changes, things change, but
maybe 200 drivers quit a week ago. I don't know.
Yeah, or the comment is that there's a part built in 1982 that they can't find anymore.
Absolutely possible. Yeah. Or maybe that's it. We have to wait for the X-Trapless 2s to come online. That would be another legitimate reason. But yeah, it's weird. The other thing is, so with the Werribee through running with Sandringham happening later in the year, that's currently constrained by a number of level crossing removal projects that are happening. So fair enough, that's a physical constraint. So the interesting thing about this is that once they do start through running, Sandringham is going to get a 10-minute all-day frequency, I believe, which is huge for the Sandringham line. It's currently 20-minute frequency, so for most of the day, that'll be doubling the service. That's obviously excellent. I do think it's worth pointing out that all things being equal, I don't think Sandringham would have been chosen for this upgrade, but the fact that they're through running with Werribee, which has got a ton of trains coming out of it, they kind of have to send those trains somewhere, and they're going to Sandringham. So Sandringham has sort of benefited from that arrangement, I think.
Yes.
But it's a great result for the Sandringham line.
Yes. There's another big winner. I think we're saying that Sunbury being the big winner, Sandringham would probably be second
easily
on that list.
Yeah.
You know?
There are also going to be increases to Werribee and Frankston apparently later in the year, but again, we don't really know anything about them. We don't know if it's going to be anything radical. I did read that it was going to go to 8 trains per hour on the Werribee line, and I sort of tried to compare that against the current timetable, but again, we run into problems of how they're defining that, because currently there are more than 8 trains if you include the Altona line, and they're probably not including that, but maybe they are, who knows. So without more specific details, it's hard to know what that specific detail means. Also not clear if that would be just a peak thing or, whatever. So there have been, perhaps surprisingly, a few increases for regional trains. There's the one I mentioned earlier, which was 10 new Seymour services, which is 1 return per weekday. The Traralgon line gets 18 new services, which is, again, 18 weekly. That is 2 extra down trains on weekdays. Doesn't match the number of ups. They must go down as 3 car sets and come back as 6 car sets, I suppose. And 2 extra each way on the weekend. So that's good. More trains for the Traralgon line, but it is pretty minor. And probably worth pointing out that it's kind of good that the Traralgon line has got an upgrade here where that's actually a line that's lost capacity in this deal, because it's running in amongst more Dandenong trains. The other one was 4 new services for Echuca, which 4 across the week is 1 return trip on Saturday and 1 return trip on Sunday, which is actually a huge upgrade for Echuca, because it's currently only 2 trains a day each day on the weekend, and that will go to 3 trains. So as a proportion of the current service, that's also a very big winner, and actually is legitimately very good, because it's a tourist destination. So more trains on a weekend, excellent.
Good.
So the other thing is the emphasis in sort of what we were told was also that this would apply to trams and buses. As far as we can tell, there are 0 changes for trams. I haven't seen anything.
I haven't seen anything, no.
There are some bus changes. A lot of them are on regional routes. There's actually quite a lot of regional bus changes, and I have not looked at them. So I assume they're minor tweaks. Maybe there's some big upgrades in there. Somebody with some regional bus expertise can tell us about that.
From what I saw, it was timing and for the extra services.
Yep.
Making sure that the buses meet the trains.
Yep.
As far as I'm
Which
aware.
is something we often don't get in the suburban area.
Exactly.
So that's
right.
pretty cool.
Yep.
So the other thing is that there are 2 suburban bus routes.
241, 402.
Yeah, the 241 and the 402.
Yeah.
And I think the 241 is a bit of an amalgamation of existing routes.
Yeah, it's 402 and the 202, which are both uni shuttles, basically. So it's just connecting them together. So you now have a cross-city bus route, basically, from Victoria Park over to Footscray, and that'll be very
and
handy.
running via Arden.
Running via Arden, running via Parkville. The Parkville precinct.
Yep.
And all that sort of thing.
So that's great. And I think it's I have written this down. On weekdays, it is a 10-minute frequency for most of the day, from about 6:30am till 9:30pm. On weekends, unfortunately, it is a bit of a traditional Melbourne weekend bus timetable. It's every 30 minutes, and it only runs from about 8:30am to 8pm. So for something that specifically connects to the Metro Tunnel, a bit disappointing it's not going to be running sort of late at night and at a more useful frequency, but we will take what we can get.
Is it the same Saturday and Sunday timetable?
I believe so. Or the frequency is the same. I think that the actual timetables are different, but the frequency is the same.
I was going to say that's an improvement from what we normally get to.
Yeah.
But we'll take
That's
that.
just going off the top of my head. I looked at a lot of timetables yesterday, so
fair enough. That'll be good. I mean, just 2 things on that. One, the numbering to me is interesting. 24. I don't think we have any. I mean, there's 246. But traditionally, you'd use those 2 routes on old tramway routes. Maybe that's a nod to the old Johnson Street trams.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was my theory.
Cool, yeah.
The other one was Victoria Park, where they're going to turn the bus around as well. Because I know one of the reasons why the 202 went all the way to Yarra Bend.
Yeah, I think it's going to Yarra Bend. I think I remember seeing Yarra Bend on the timetable.
Well, there we go. Yarra Bend, because they can turn the bus around.
Yeah. And that explains why it goes to Yarra Bend.
Yes, the last stop is in the middle of bush, basically.
Cool. Someone should do a video about that. So the other is the 402, which I don't really have any particular observations on, except the fact that Transport Victoria website describes it as having 80 new weekly services. And this is where they've mixed up their weekly metric, and it's actually 80 per day. I think 80 per weekday. So it's actually a rare case where it's actually a lot better than they're making it sound there. It's actually a pretty good timetable. 80 buses a day is great. That's more than some of the train lines have. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
But classic bit of Transport Victoria PTV information there.
Mm-hmm. And the other 3 routes, I guess, but they changed a while ago. That was before the big switch. You had the 603, 604 and 605. They were all related to the Metro Tunnel as well, but they're not part of the big switch because they've already happened. So beyond those, I don't think there were any others unless I've missed something. It was pretty much...
I didn't see anything else suburban, yeah. I just want to read the quote from the government press release about buses specifically. It says, the big switch will integrate the Metro Tunnel into the wider transport network, implementing thousands of individual timetable changes at once. Again, you could probably define that in various different ways, including the first of 260 new bus timetables to better connect the Metro Tunnel services, directly changing the way half of all commuters move around Melbourne. So it's a little bit hard to tell what they're talking about there. I don't know. Is that 260 bus routes getting changes? And does that equal half of all commuters around Melbourne? I don't think so.
Don't know. I think the Metropolitan Bus Network carries 1/3 of all transport passengers. So
again, this is one of those things. I don't think we even have enough information to say that that's wrong. But there's there's obviously some other factor there that we is not included in the information. So
and it's very explicit saying that this is part of the big switch, not something that comes afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes. Okay. In fact, absolutely. Yeah. The start of that quote says the big switch will integrate, and then 260 bus changes, and then what we've seen is that there are not. There's hardly any bus changes. So
and certainly not half of Melbourne's.
What are they talking about? I don't know.
Half of Melbourne's commuters. Remains to be seen. I guess remains to be seen. I think this is probably a good time to kind of emphasise this point: is that the Metro Tunnel is one of many big infrastructure projects that we've had. We've had level crossing removals, so many big build projects over the past decade or so, more still to come as well. But the Metro Tunnel is kind of this, grand project that kind of ties everything together, and that's really how it's been sold as well. Getting rid of level crossings on railway lines means we can run more trains. That's how all the press releases and advertising has emphasised it. And this has kind of been, as we said before, building up to this point to kind of unveil this brand new transport network basically for Victoria, and not just for Melbourne but for the whole state, across every tram, train, bus, coach, V-line service. And the Metro Tunnel is just one of those. So it isn't that the Metro Tunnel by itself is necessarily solving a lot of problems, but the Metro Tunnel combined with all the other ones that have been done and that are still yet to come,
be tied in together.
So that's kind of where a lot of this is coming from, I think, is that the big switch is kind of the culmination of many, many, many years of work. We've built a lot of infrastructure. We haven't seen that much service uplift. Now is the time when we can do it. Finally, now that we've solved all these infrastructure barriers, now we can do it.
So what are we waiting for?
That's kind of the $1 million question at this point.
And I think, to be a bit more specific on that too, especially with the level crossing removals, it's sort of been one of the things we've been told to keep us happy while we're kicked onto replacement buses for weeks and weeks at a time, that this will allow more reliability, more frequent trains, and that's been essentially just untrue. We keep having these big projects, and then they're just not followed through. I mean, the Lilydale Belgrave line's got to be one of the better examples, particularly Lilydale, which is arguably level crossing free.
Except Bank Street. Fox Hill.
Oh, which one's that? Oh, is that the
pedestrian level crossings as well?
Philip and I
sorry,
both,
that's my big...
No, I'm completely on board with that observation. Sorry. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about there is still a pedestrian crossing, and the big build doesn't differentiate that, and they just say there are no level crossings because I don't think any of them have ever been pedestrians, so they don't know that those crossings still exist. And that's the same on the Sunbury line. There's still pedestrian crossings on the Sunbury line.
Exactly.
So, yes.
But even leaving that aside...
Yes, leaving our little pedantry aside there. The reality is that it's been a mammoth effort to remove those level crossings on the Lilydale line, and the Lilydale line is one of the lines getting nothing out of this. Another project I will mention, which has personal significance to me, is the Hurstbridge line duplication, which again was pushed as, oh, it'll be painful, but we'll be able to run so many more trains, and it's so underutilized. There's a handful of 10-minute frequency trains in the peaks to Eltham, but broadly speaking, it was sort of implied that we'd be getting an off-peak frequency boost, which is what we all want, and that's just absolutely not come to fruition. So really, we've had years and years of like, oh, it'll be the next time we'll get more trains. It'll be after the next level crossing removal. It'll be after the next bit of duplication that we'll get it. And it's not happening. And, this whole branding and build up to the big switch, we kind of started to think maybe this would be it. And it's not been that at all. And I think a lot of travellers really seem to think that their low frequencies are due to infrastructure constraints, and it's basically untrue most of the time. So we're talking about off-peak frequencies here. Obviously, during the peak, a lot of lines do run to their full capacity, but off-peak, where you can really create a lot more value by slashing wait times, most of the lines are not running at their full capacity, probably all of them actually.
Yeah.
And if you live in Eltham and you think that you only get a train every 20 minutes because of single track, that's not true. You can run a train every 10 minutes to Eltham. Same goes for Belgrave, a bunch of other places that have single track. You can absolutely run a train there every 10 minutes. What I'm actually going to do is give myself another job for the editing. I'm going to put a map up on the screen and just highlight the parts of the network where you can't run a train every 10 minutes. And I think most of them I've already mentioned so far. There's going to be the upfield bit between Eltham and Hurstbridge. You can only run a train every 20 minutes. But even then, most of the time, they're only every 40 minutes. So that's a really, really obvious low-hanging fruit. I think Eltham to Hurstbridge will be the last remaining sort of full-time outside peak 40-minute frequency left on the network. It would be a really low-hanging fruit to fill that out, make that a 20-minute frequency, and then you could say the entire metro network, except Sunny Point, has a train every 20 minutes. Wouldn't that be a cool thing to be able to say? And a large part of the network could be every 10 minutes. Yeah. So, most of the network, you can run a train every 10 minutes if you feel like it. Yeah.
So as you said, it's not infrastructure. Like, there are some infrastructure constraints, and it isn't just about frequency, the stabling and, tracks and all that kind of thing, which, again, is outlined in the Metro Tunnel business case as the Metro Tunnel enabling, creating the conditions through which that can be done in the future. But it's not like you have to get the network 100% perfect before you can start making these extra upgrades. You can do a lot with what we have now.
And key point is too, for like off-peak improvements, you generally don't actually need more trains because we have the number of trains that are required for the peak. Yeah. So at the moment you get a bunch of trains that just go and stable off-peak, so you just use those trains. The trains are available. You do need more drivers because at the moment that would, rest breaks and stuff would be included in those times. But this is something we can foresee, we can
plan for this.
You can plan for these things, yeah. And I guess, key thing of how important it is to improve off-peak frequencies compared to peak frequencies. Like you were saying before, you throw a handful more trains into the peak times and most people won't notice. But if you make a 40-minute frequency into a 20-minute frequency, or you make 20 into 10, that's really, really significant for people, and it just makes it so much more likely that they're just going to walk down to their local station and jump on the train instead of, getting in the car.
And you don't need that many extra trains or drivers?
No. Most of the time you could do it with 0 extra trains. And it's not that many more drivers. I don't know the numbers on this, but it's not a massive number. Yeah.
No. So it's not, this isn't about having a whinge or anything. It's more, as you said, where we're led to expect certain things. A lot of those things have been met, which is great. So as we said, a large part of the network is going to be the highest standard of any line that we currently have. We have other improvements that are going on, but there's a lot of stuff, there's a big chunk of that missing.
So we're really going to end up in a situation where we still have parts of the network that have 30-minute waits, 40-minute waits, and at times 60-minute waits after 8 p.m. On the Hurstbridge line at 60 minutes. I'm not sure if there's any others. Belgrave possibly, yeah. And I guess one of the other things is like that. One of the other ways they've been trying to spin the Metro Tunnel as a benefit for everyone is that, like, oh, well, if you live in Box Hill, you'll be able to go into the city, change trains, and go to Parkville. Like, cool, but then you'll be coming home, you get your train from Parkville back to, Melbourne Central or whatever, and then you're train into Box Hills in 20 minutes or longer, or if you're going out to Hurstbridge, maybe it's in 39 minutes, maybe it's in 59 minutes if it's late at night. So I don't think they can with a straight face claim that as a benefit for everyone without much more widespread timetable reform.
Which isn't to say, again, like the Metro Tunnel doesn't necessarily have to benefit everyone, but that's what it's been sold as.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. I think they've put so much emphasis on trying to please everyone, when physically it doesn't do that. The physical changes that it does is freeing up space in the Northern Loop and allowing a higher throughput of trains on that Dandenong-Sunbury corridor. That's sort of the physical part of it. Every other part above that is additional service to make the system better.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to do that. And if they hadn't said they were going to do that, we wouldn't be pointing it out as something that was missing right now. But we were very much led to believe that that's what was going to happen.
Yeah. From the beginning, again, in the business case, it does talk about improved frequency for the benefits of it. The core frequencies and things. It does say things like Belgrave, Lilydale, Clifton Hill Group are not part of the core business case, but since then it's kind of morphed into promises of change for things like that.
Yeah. And I think I know a lot of people are going to sort of immediately conclude that this is as simple as, politicians lie all the time. I think something more complicated is happening here, because if I was a politician and I was going to tell a lie that I knew I couldn't keep up with, I'd tell it just before an election, then I'd get elected, and then I would break the promise. And that's the format that most politicians follow, if they choose to do that. This has not followed that pattern. This has been big build-up, big promise to a big reveal that has actually been a very small reveal, and then a kind of, you might get some more stuff later, but we're not going to tell you what it is. And we still have an election coming later this year. So, I think it would be really good to see a much better explanation of what's going on. And if you do live somewhere with a, sub 20-minute frequency at certain times, I think, the people who live in those areas kind of deserve to know when they will get a frequency increase. It's just been such a long time of sort of build up to, you'll probably get it, and then you won't. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, another thing as well that we've kind of, again, we already know this, but if I remember correctly, all of the tram infrastructure upgrades that were required to enable some of those most of those tram service changes would have been de-scoped from the project at various times and not happened. The only one, I believe, that was listed in the business case that has happened is the Victoria Street link across Elizabeth Street. That kind of got suddenly built about a year ago, or not even a year ago, a couple of months ago. So that does exist, but again, we don't know if or when that's going to be used. If that's just going to be used to move trams between depots, maybe G-class trams, I don't really know. Or if that is going to allow something like the 57 tram to be rerouted onto Swanston Street or vice versa. We don't really know that yet. So those tram changes that we talked about before and that have been advertised, and again, were part of the core business case, have not happened. The Park Street extension being one example of something that hasn't happened, to take those trams off Swanston Street. Potentially, the reason behind that may be because of what you were saying before about the 10-minute frequency down the Metro Tunnel not providing enough of an incentive, amongst other things, for people to get off the trams and onto the trains. Currently, Swanston Street's the busiest tram corridor in the world. You've got trams like every 20 seconds or something in peak. You can't compete with that if you're running trains every 10 minutes. Even outside of peak, the Swanston Street is chocks with trams. So you can't really move half those services up onto William Street or something if the train network isn't up to scratch.
It's pretty, and like I was saying, like if you can see a tram coming, you're probably just going to get on it. And most of the time on Swanston Street, you can see a tram coming. Like they're not very far apart.
Exactly. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe they will get built at some point in the future. But as I said, they were de-scoped from the project and without explanation, really.
Yeah, and it's another one of the things where we're sort of given this very like generalized promises of like there will be changes to trams without any sort of specifics, and then that's just like vanished from the information. It's just not in there. In fact, I should do a Control F on the press release for the word tram, and I don't know if it's in there. I've got a hard copy in front of me which I can't manually Control F, but I'll do that later. I'm pretty sure it doesn't mention them. One other little thing that noticed is that, so we've kind of got this issue of like, there'll be a lot of people changing trains at Caulfield, and I made a video about some of the problems with that. They've sort of partly remedied that by saying all Metro Tunnel trains will stop at Malvern. And I noticed so basically just gives you a choice. So hopefully people will spread themselves between those two stations. But there's no real like mechanism for that, like for making sure people spread themselves, right? They're not going to make an announcement, be like, half of you get off here. But the really curious thing about that is that not all Frankston trains stop at Malvern. So there's a weird thing where in the morning peak, and this is in both the current timetable and in the Big Switch timetable, the Frankston Expresses in the morning stop at Malvern. In the afternoon, they don't. So there's going to be people that will change at Malvern in the morning and go, oh yeah, that was pretty good, and then get off there in the afternoon and the Frankston train's going to go flying straight past. There are also Frankston stoppers that stop there, so it's not like a trap, but if you want to get one of those Frankston Expresses, they don't stop at Malvern. So that's a very weird, I mean, that's sort of weird decision in two parts. Partly the having them stop in one direction, not the other. I'm sure there is a reason for that. I don't know what it is. But also the fact that they've been like actively plugging Malvern as a place to change trains.
I don't think Malvern's staffed either, is it?
That's a good question.
Premium station?
We will find out, and that will be also on the screen right now.
Because that would be an important thing too if you're expecting a lot of people.
I have a feeling that it is, but I could be wrong. Definitely the other ones on the math section are not, I think.
I don't think, because it's not gated. So that's the other thing.
Is it one of those weird ones where there's a gate on the island platform but not on the other ones? Maybe it's not.
The Mikey readers are on the platform.
Okay, yeah.
I believe.
Okay, so it's probably not stuffed then if it's
We're speculating now about Malvern Station infrastructure, so we will clarify in the video. Well, I think maybe now we can talk about what's next, I guess, for the transport network. I mean, the Metro Tunnel's it's the largest rail infrastructure project we've had since the City Loop. There's now, I guess, talk about what's up next. Melbourne's still growing rapidly in jobs and employment and people living here. We've got suburban rail loop, airport rail, sort of, Sunshine Super Hub. There's a whole lot of other things that could be done that are in the PCV network development plan, that are in various other plans and strategies and things that have come over the past few decades. So I guess the questions are, most immediately, what's going to happen later this year in the details of that, as we talked about before, for the Northern Group. And then after that, in terms of both infrastructure and services, what's coming next. The business case talks about the Metro Tunnel enabling a whole range of other projects. I think it calls them network enhancements or something. And that's things like Melton electrification, quadding the tracks out to Melton, more trains, the Extrapolis 2 is coming online as well. So there's other stuff going on. I guess the question for us to talk about is what is going to happen? What should happen?
And that quad track out to, like, is it Deer Park or somewhere?
Somewhere there, yeah.
That's on the diagram for Sunshine Super Hub as well.
Yeah.
So I assume that's happening, but yeah, who knows? I mean,
we'll see.
I still think there's a really inconsistent treatment of Melton and Wyndham Vale too, where it's very much acknowledged that they are both de facto suburban lines. I mean, if it wasn't for the way that we clearly define suburban metro, I know most people call it metro now, I still call it suburban. If it wasn't for the fact that we so clearly defined that from the regional network operated by V-Line, by every other definition, these are suburban lines already, and they're running suburban frequencies with trains that are packed full, in peak hours, and they should both be electrified. It seems odd to me there's so much focus on Melton electrification and basically no mention of it to Wyndham Vale. There was an article recently about possibly thinking about battery trains for Wyndham Vale. Do not do that. Do not do that. Electrify it properly.
Poles and wires. Poles and wires, it's a solved problem.
If anyone doesn't understand why that's a bad idea, I would actually like to make a video about that for Wyndham Vale specifically and about that article specifically, but
you could watch my video on battery electric trams and what happened to them. There you go.
Exactly.
As a precursor to that.
Battery trains kind of work for, like, they're actually very good for, like, short, low frequency and low speed sort of branch line use. That's basically the only thing they're good for. This is like a proper serious line with a top speed of 160, mind you, and like frequent 6-car trains. Just put wires up, electrify it properly, and yeah, it'll be a million times better. Yeah. Anyway.
So that is one project you could do,
Yeah,
again,
absolutely.
electrifying, doing the Western Rail Plan,
Yeah.
all those sorts of things, which again, now that you have, tidied up the Sunbury line, you've now got the Werribee line running differently, this is, the next step, this is what can be promised next. So, okay, we've done this. This is coming up. It'll be a huge improvement for the West.
Yeah. I reckon we've barely or perhaps not mentioned the airport line so far, and I think by this stage in the video somebody will have watched half the video and then commented that we haven't mentioned the airport line.
That is true.
I think it's basically a given that that's happening now, but it's just going to take a while. I think they're doing some sort of preliminary work on it at the moment. I don't know, but
I don't know if the bike Marcus will have to update us on whether the bike path's still closed or not.
Yes.
That's a very important thing as well. And then, of course, you got Spurpin Rail Loop. A lot of the work they've awarded the tenders, I think, for some of the early construction works. They've done all the early works. There are big holes in the ground out in clay.
Yeah, I was actually really quite shocked by how advanced it is already. There's a lot of work happening.
Yeah. I think they're going to award more contracts this year. So that's happening too. I mean,
and they announced the design for the trains as well the other day.
There you go.
Someone pointed out to me that I was pointing out that Anzac is the most southerly underground station in the world, and Cheltenham is going to. Is it Cheltenham?
Yeah, that is true.
Cheltenham will be the newest, most southerly underground station in the world. So there you go.
It's a good one.
So yeah, unless Dunedin builds one or something. Currently have 0 passenger trains, so probably not. But
Hobart Metro, here we come.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to that. I should say everything, all the sort of actual analysis of numbers and stuff we've done in this, it's all just using publicly available information. We don't people sort of assume we have industry insights. We don't necessarily, and everything that I prepared for this is from publicly available information you can look at yourself. So if you're curious about exactly what the timetable looks like, go have a look at it, because maybe you'll spot some stuff that I didn't. And the huge thanks to Philip for coming in on this one. And if you are not already aware of Philip's channel, which I reckon most of you probably are, but statistically some of you probably aren't, go have a look at Philip's channel. He does some transport stuff, but also a lot of more general Melbourne history stuff. And what's a video that you think they should go and watch?
Well, I mean, since we've been talking about the Metro Tunnel, and battery electric trains, my battery electric trams video, the history of that and how they didn't happen in Melbourne would be very topical.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, again, Metro Tunnel related, but the opening of my video, the opening day, where I actually went and spoke to some people and heard their thoughts on what they thought about the Metro Tunnel. Yeah,
which is a great change for me. I usually avoid talking to people under almost all circumstances, so it was really good to see that different take. So go and subscribe to Philip's channel, and thank you very much for listening in. Yeah, if you're not subscribed to Tate's Set, make sure you subscribe to that as well, but thank you for having me along. No worries, thank you.